And welcome back again.
Yes.
We
Welcome back for another session
of the Seed to Harvest Summit. We're excited. We got Melissa Norris coming and joining us today. And we are doing another giveaway, of course. And but we're going to switch it up a little bit here. And we're going to do a shout out to our sponsor for today first. And then we're going to do the giveaway because Melissa is going to actually be part of the giveaway. So we're going to do a shout out to...
Shall we give them the word?
Oh, yeah. Let's do the word. Good call, Dad. Let's see. What shall... Put the word in live, L-I-V-E, or live. Live, live. Drop that in the chat. All right, while you're doing that, shout out to our sponsor today, which is Bootstrap Farmer. And Bootstrap Farmer has lots of all kinds of seed starting trays and tools and grow bags and all kinds of things to meet your needs when it comes to starting starts in your garden or on your farm. If you missed the recent session with them, you'll want to jump back and watch that session and learn all about Bootstrap Farmer and what they do. I have to say, I used to use these really flimsy little plastic trays to grow microgreens in, and literally they would tear apart like within a year and you'd have to throw it away. And that's a horrible use of plastic. And so if you want something sturdy that will hold up well, that stands firm in your hand when you're carrying it, so it's not like falling, flipping over and your plants and everything falling out, then you definitely want to check out Bootstrap Farmer and their trays. And there's a link below this video with more that will take you over to where you can check out their products. All right. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest today. Melissa Norris is the host of the popular Pioneering Today podcast. She's the author of 5 books, including The Family Garden Plan and Everything Worth Preserving. And she and her family raise 99% of their own meat and over 65% of their fruits and vegetables for their entire year on their homestead in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains. It is gorgeous, by the way. If you grab a School of Traditional Skills account, you can go see a class by Melissa and you can see the beautiful mountains behind her at her place. So we're excited. Melissa loves teaching homesteaders and gardeners. And welcome, Melissa. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, super excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Yeah, we're excited to have you. And I told everyone you're part of the giveaway because you have the magazine to show people. We're going to be sharing a homestead. Let me see if I can pull you up big. How do I switch over to Melissa now that I pull it up big? I don't know how to do this.
Oh, hey, you did it. There we go.
I think Luke did it.
Thanks, Luke.
Yeah. Homesteading Monthly. We're giving away is it a magazine or a subscription?
Yeah, it is a magazine by subscription. So it's a year's subscription. So it comes out every month in print. This one is from a few back. But yes, in print, lots and lots of articles on all aspects of homesteading. So herbalism, definitely gardening, kitchen stuff in there, land management, inspirational stories on other homesteaders. So it's just a wealth of information. Joel Salatin has a monthly column in there every month. I have a monthly column in there every month. And then we have lots of guest writers as well. So really fun to have hit your mailbox every single month.
All right. So someone gets to win it. Are you ready? Let's pull up our giveaway screen and we'll pick the winner. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. And the winner is, dun, dun, dun. The suspense is always here. Lynn Marie.
Congratulations, Lynn.
Yes. Huge congratulations.
Yay, Lynn.
Yes.
Lynn Marie, please email support@seedtime.us to claim your subscription to homestead living, and you're going to enjoy it, I am sure. All right. We also have a short little video from Homestead Living to play for you all. So you can just catch a little bit more of a glimpse of what that is. Homestead Living is one of our sponsors for this event as well. And so with the giveaway, we wanted to play a little video for you. Do we have that, Luke?
We believe food looks and tastes better when it comes from a mason jar, and that every home should have a well-used cast iron skillet. We believe in starting where you are, in being a good steward, and that homesteading is a mindset first. We believe that our great-grandmothers were right about almost everything, and we believe that there is a homesteader in you.
All right. Awesome. All right. And that's a great segue over to you, Melissa.
Yeah.
We're going to turn the time over to you, and just going to let everyone know in the chat that feel free to ask questions as we go along. We'll star them, and then we'll come back and have a short Q&A at the end. Does that sound good?
Yeah. I always love Q&A. They're some of my favorite parts. So sweet.
All right.
Okay.
Let's do it. So we'll drop backstage, and we'll let you take it away.
All right. Awesome. Let's see. Hey, oh, Luke's already on it. I was going to say, Luke, can you bring up my slide there for me? Well, welcome, guys. I'm really excited to be here. It's been a week of a ton of really awesome learning and stuff. I hope you guys are having a blast. So we're going to be talking about top garden crops for food preservation in today's class. So I am super curious if you would let me know in the chat if you preserve any food now or not. So put brand new if you haven't done much food preservation, or go ahead and put somewhat if you've already started doing some food preservation. Very curious to see where everybody's levels are at. Oh, we've got some brand news there. Woohoo! Awesome. Brand new, very little from Rosa. Leslie, brand new. Susan, yes, for years. Okay, Susan, great. For using the freezer, Emily, somewhat, some food preservation, a lot more brand new, somewhat. Okay, awesome. Well, looks like we've got a good balance there. I think a little bit more on the brand new part. Good news is, I have a feeling everybody will be learning something today, I hope, or being able to pass on tips to other people in the chat. So we're going to be learning, but this one is very much focused on growing your crops for food presentation. So if we haven't had the pleasure of meeting, I know I got to see some familiar names in the chat and got to comment back with some of you. So welcome back to those that I have the pleasure of meeting. If it's our first time being introduced to one another, my name is Melissa K. Norris, and you may have recognized my website, melissaknorris.com. I have a YouTube channel with Modern Homesteading, or the Pioneering Today podcast. The podcast has actually been rated for several years now, one of the top 6 podcasts in all of North America and the United States in the health and garden category, which feels pretty awesome. And I love knowing that there's a large amount of people who are interested in health and gardening and all those aspects of homesteading. So I am a podcast junkie. It's one of my favorite ways to learn about things. So if you are a podcast person, make sure that you check it out if you haven't yet. I'm also the founder of the Pioneering Today Academy, which is our homestead membership site, as well as a wife. So my husband and I have been married going on 25 plus years. I have 2 teens, though my son is almost, this April, he will be 20. And I can no longer say I have 2 teens. So he is a young adult, but us moms like to keep those babies smaller in our mind. And we live on a 15-acre homestead, and then we purchased 3 years ago a 40-acre farm a half a mile down the road from us to be able to increase our production and offer farm stay and in-person workshops. So we don't technically live on 55 acres, but we own and manage that many acreage. I own and run 4 different businesses, but the reason that I'm sharing that with you is not to be like, oh, look at all that we're doing. The reason I share that with you is because despite doing all of these things, growing our own food, using regenerative agriculture practices, and putting up our own food for the off season is super important to me. But I've had to figure out ways in order to do that, to maximize what we're doing so that I can still do all of the things that need to be done. And so those are the things that I'm going to be sharing with you today. Some of these things I've been doing for 25 years. Some of them has been the refinement throughout those 25 years, but I want to share them with you so that you can get a jump start and jump in and have the benefit of knowing these things just that much sooner in your journey as you look to food preservation. So this is a picture of us in our pantry, and we use many different forms of food preservation. So there's lots of different ways that you can preserve food, but it has been really amazing that we've been able to get to a point where we have the majority of our food we're growing here on our land and in a relatively short time frame. So for warm weather crops, just for some reference there, I usually don't plant out my warm weather crops until Memorial Weekend, so the end of May. And then sometimes we can have our first frost, early sneaky first frost. Sometimes will come in mid-September. If we're lucky, they come mid-October. There's always a range there. So just to give you an idea of what our growing season looks like. But from that growing season, we're able to produce over 65% of our fruits and vegetables for an entire year. But that does mean using a lot of different food preservation techniques, just because we are pretty far north and unable to grow a lot of things outside of that season. There's some cold frames and different things that we can push the boundary on certain things, but the majority of our growing happens in those summer month time period. So crop type and variety matter, especially when it comes to food preservation. It can mean the difference between those crops being able to preserve long-term and making it through, but it also can be the difference between spending a lot of extra time getting those to a point in the preservation journey. And I don't know about you, but I don't really have a lot of time extra laying around in my day. So I'm going to be sharing with you first today the very easiest forms and varieties of crops and food preservation with those crops first. So we're going to go in easy peasy, doesn't really require any equipment. And then we're going to kind of work our way through there with my top crops and varieties. So root cellar techniques, we're going to be talking about first. And you do not have to have a root cellar in order to do these techniques, nor does it have to be a basement or a garage. You can successfully use root cellar techniques, and we're going to go through these today, without that. We live in a fancy way is saying a manufactured home. I live in a double wide. You can do these in a double wide, which means you can pretty much do it in any type of house and still be successful with that. So root cellar techniques when it comes to the preservation of food is simply using temperature and humidity levels to prolong the shelf life of specific foods. And there's some different ways that we can manipulate that dependent upon what that crop needs. So root cellar equipment, if you will, is baskets or breathable bags, an area without direct sunlight. And we're going to get into this in just a minute on exact temperatures and humidity percentages for specific crops. But temperature ranges from 70 degrees Fahrenheit to 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the reason that that's important to know is especially the direct sunlight, without direct sunlight. So we used coat closets before we built on just on the other side of that door, which is a northern facing part of our house without windows, is what we now use as our extended pantry, and I use for the root cellar techniques that I'm going to be sharing with you today. And that room goes anywhere from about 65 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter time because it's furthest away from our wood stove, which is the heat source. And then in the summertime, just whatever our indoor temperatures are. But one of the key things is without direct sunlight. So you can do this in a closet of a room. You can do it under a bed. So get creative. For those of you who live in small spaces and you're like, I don't know if I have anywhere for that. You do. And so it might be having, multiple closets, using them, that type of thing. So for the root cellar, the key is going to be one varieties that we're going to get into in a minute, but temperature and humidity are the key in order for this to be successful. So crops that prefer cold and damp temperatures between, and please feel free to, if you want to take a screenshot of these, I know there's a lot of information on some of these screens. So if you have your phone and want to take a photo or a screenshot or come back and watch that, then please feel free. I really want you to get this information. So crops that prefer it cold and damp with their temperatures between 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, right? So that's above freezing. We don't want them to actually freeze, but staying relatively cool. So this is going to be about the temps that you would expect to have in a refrigerator. But it's the humidity, and they require humidity around 90%. So this is beets, carrots, celery, radishes, rutabagas, and turnips. So if they don't have the humidity, that's when they shrivel up. And if they get too shriveled up, they're really just not edible if they shrivel up too much, and they'll start to degrade. So it is the cold temperature and the humidity that is key for these items. So what I do, especially with my carrots and radishes and beets, is I leave them in the ground in the fall before we get really big, heavy snows or super cold temperatures where I'm freezing, inches down, and I mulch them really well. And that's because with the extra mulch, they stay cool, but they keep their humidity. And so for me, that has worked the best. And I can keep beets in the ground through usually about the first part of January, just with our climate, and carrots. The carrots I do actually year round, and I can keep carrots for the most part year round in the ground with heavy mulching. Other options, however, is in a fridge, or if you do have an area that doesn't freeze but stays that cold, for the humidity would be putting it in some bins with damp sand or damp sawdust, something where they're not going to rot from being too wet, but that you can keep them in humidity. And so just putting them in like a basket or a bin without damp sand or damp sawdust or something like that, they will dry out. So the humidity part is key. So these are things that like to be cold and dry. So this includes some fruits and vegetables. And it's technically less humidity. So I don't know that you'd really call it dry, but for sake of this presentation, we're going to call it drier. And this is between still that 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. So like a refrigerator temperature, but the humidity levels don't have to be as low. So they're more between 60 and 70%. Versus the 90% for the previous crops. So these that do really well are going to be things like apples, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, pears, and potatoes. So these can be in a fridge, but you're not having to pack them necessarily in damp sand or that type of medium in order to keep up their humidity levels. Oftentimes people will be able to store things, especially like apples, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts. If you do have a room that doesn't freeze, but stays relatively cold, can also do other. So sometimes that could be, a garage that's just insulated, but it's not really heated. If you do have a basement crawl space, that type of thing. Now, one of the things that I have found for us is with our potatoes specifically, our potatoes at just keeping them like in a fridge, or we do have some sheds that I've tried keeping them in that didn't freeze, but they did end up shriveling. And so the humidity just wasn't quite enough. So what we have done with our potatoes, now again, this is going to depend upon where you live, if this would be successful for you, is I do a late season potato planting. And you do want to make sure with potatoes, this is where variety is important, that you are doing a potato that has good storage. So I'd like to do a late season potato variety because they will just start to come on and be ready to harvest at fall when I'm starting to hit our natural cold temperatures anyways. So some varieties that have stored really well for us, these are also late season potato varieties for your planting time, but they're also a good storage variety, is German Butterball is my personal favorite. I love German Butterball, but fingerlings, russet, and Russian blue. So these are four that we've grown and used this method with, and it works well. So what I do is I plant mine in the ground, and I do them in trenches. So I dig it nice and deep, and then we continue to fill in that with soil so that they're a little bit deeper in the ground, and that offers some extra protection from hard frost. Then I mulch them really heavy, again, keeping them protected and somewhat insulated, but the soil naturally has the humidity that we need. It is well draining soil enough that they don't rot in the ground. That is also important if you have really soggy clay soil, that it is well draining. I leave mine in the ground all year and just harvest them throughout the winter. So if I know we have a big snow coming, snow is actually insulating, but it is kind of a pain to dig through when I need to get potatoes. So I keep an eye on the weather. And if I know that we're having some really deep freezes coming or some big snow weather, etc., I will go out and just dig enough potatoes to last us for 3 to 4 weeks. Potatoes will last you just fine for 3 to 4 weeks in most homes. And then with our weather, I'll be able to, in between there, be able to access them again, and that storm will pass. So I have done this method of just using in the ground storage for I think 6 years now. And then the beautiful thing is they will start to sprout, and then they become my seed potatoes for the next year. Whereas when I've tried to pull them out, I've had early sprouting and shriveling and rotting issues. So in the ground has worked really well for us by doing a late season planting and the method I just shared with you, and these specific potato varieties. So best vegetables to store without humidity control. Now, this is where anybody can do these ones, and it works really well. So these crops do best between 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, but we will just keep them in our kitchen and our side room and in the closets in the house. So whatever temperature my house is, ideally away from your heat source. So if it's in a bedroom and it's in a closet with the door shut, right, that closet's going to be a little bit cooler. But the room that I have them in right now does get up to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's okay. Less than 60% humidity, which is what most homes are going to be. Now, I know if you're in the South, then you probably have higher humidity than that just normally in your home, but they're not going to shrivel up, and they prefer to be drier, which is what you're going to experience in most home conditions. So this is going to be garlic. Garlic does extremely well. The longest, if you're looking for the longest shelf life, they will go anywhere. I've had garlic that we have cured and braided and stored this way, stay for up to 18 months. And that would be soft neck varieties. Hard neck varieties will still store for about 6 to 9 months. They just don't tend to store quite as long as the soft neck. So if you're looking for longest variety as far as storage purposes go, look for soft neck varieties. Plus, it's easier to you can braid the soft neck varieties, and so then you can just hang them. I find the soft neck just work better all the way around for us. And Chileum Red is one of our favorite varieties. A lot of people like Music is another really favorite variety, but there's lots of good soft neck varieties out there, and all of them have pretty equal good storage capabilities. Next up, big surprise, is going to be onions. However, with onions, you do want to make sure you're getting a long storage variety. So sweet onions, because of the sugar content, don't tend to store as long. So I love Walla Walla sweets. I do live in Washington State, so Walla Wallas are great. But any of your sweet onions, they're not going to last for months. Maybe 8 weeks. It's going to depend a little bit there, but that's usually kind of the longest that you're going to get, where the majority of them are good, and then they'll start to sprout or go soft, etc. So you do want to make sure that you're getting a long-term storage variety of onions in order for this to work. And that you are curing them well. So what you see here is they're on a shelf on our covered back porch so that they don't get sun scald when we harvest them. And then I'm letting them dry all the way until what you still see is green here when this photo was taken, but until that stem and all the way in the center is completely dry. And then I go ahead and thread them or braid them and bring them in the house for our long-term storage. But here I have a Patterson and blush varieties, and they will last me clear through until the next year. So I'll pull and harvest here my onions. I do a summer planting of them, pull and harvest them in August, and then I will have them last, if we haven't eaten all of them, until the next August when we're harvesting, which is pretty great. The blush do tend to go a little bit faster, so I usually will use those up first. I still have some blush right now. I did have a few that started to go soft on me, so we've been working our way through the blush onions right now as we're into February, and then I save the yellow onions once we're done with the blush. You do, depending upon where you live with onions, if you've not grown onions before, you do want to make sure you're getting appropriate variety by hour. So you have long day, neutral day, and short day. And that depends on where you live in the US. So the further north you are, we're long day. If you're kind of in the mid, and there's lots of different places you can go to see where you are by your specific state and where you fall. But you do want to make sure you're ordering appropriately on your onion varieties within that long day, neutral day, and short day. And then the onion varieties, most of these are going to be long day. Some of them may fall into neutral day, but you do want to look for storage varieties, and and they will have that on most of the websites when you're getting your onion sets and or seed, and saying if they're storage varieties. But just know if it's a sweet onion, it's not going to have long storage variety. Patterson is a great one. Red Wing is supposed to be a really good storage variety. I grow the Blush, and those have done really well for me. I get the Blush from Dixon Dale Onion. There is no sponsorship or affiliate there. It's just where I get my onion sets from when I'm not growing them out from seed myself. Copra is another yellow onion that does well in northern regions and is a storage variety, as well as Newburgh yellow onion storage variety. And you're kind of seeing a theme there. Most of your storage varieties are going to be yellow onion. There are a few red and blush that will work, but make sure they say stores well. Other varieties that work really well, this is your winter squash, specifically delicata, butternut, and spaghetti squash. They work, Hubbard also is really good varieties, but your winter squash, when cured properly, will store for months. We have had delicata and spaghetti squash, as well as some Hubbard squash varieties, last all the way through until July. So that means harvested here in like August or September, and then last almost an entire year just sitting on the shelves in my home. Nothing special done to them. The key to this is when you harvest them, make sure that you're leaving the stem on by an inch or two. That stem is going to help prevent oxygen from getting inside of the squash and breaking it down faster. So make sure that anytime you're picking them yourself, which, because I hope you're growing them yourself, that stem is on. But if you are going to like a U-Pick farm or are in a CSA or anything like that, or you're just at the store and it's like a super good buy on winter squash, maybe you didn't get enough from your own garden, just make sure that you're purchasing the ones that still have like an inch or two of the stem on. And then you're going to let those dry until that stem is brown and dry, doesn't look green anymore. And that outside skin has hardened up. So any nicks or scratches or anything will harden up. That's called curing. And then you can move them into your back storage area, what's ideally cool, out of direct light, etc. And they'll store really well. Now, I do acorn squash. I love acorn squash. It's one of our favorites, as well as sugar pie pumpkins. But the acorn squash and the sugar pie pumpkins tend to have a higher sugar content, so they don't last as long. However, I still have about 6 acorn squash right now. I did have one start to rot, so you do want to inspect when you're using root cellar techniques. It's kind of like one bad apple will spoil the barrel. Same thing when you've got your onions threaded or braided, any of those things. Make sure you don't have one starting to go bad and remove it as soon as it is, so that it's not touching and spreading to the rest. But I still have 6 acorn squash from this past summer's garden that are great and good to go, and we're working our way through those. So I have found that the sugar pie pumpkins specifically, because those are usually higher sugar content than even the acorn squash, those usually will last for me until about December, which is great because I usually am using those the most in holiday baking, like Thanksgiving and Christmas. After that, I'll start to notice that the sugar pie pumpkins, any that I have left, will start to turn, so that I'm either going to be canning them, cooking them, etc., making sure that I use them up right away. So just a little bit there. I found with those sugary ones like the acorn and sugar pie pumpkins, like maybe 4 to 6 months max, whereas delicata, butternut, Hubbards, etc., those spaghetti squash I've had last almost an entire year, which is pretty cool. Oh, and this was the photo I forgot of. I started talking about the pumpkins a little too fast there. So this is one of the smaller sugar pie pumpkins. It's not quite ripe yet, which is why it's still on the vine. So canning and fermenting. So that kind of covers our easiest root cellar type varieties and methods of using those storage methods. Now we're coming up onto our canning and fermenting. So when it comes to canning and fermenting, we have to talk about tomatoes. When it comes to making things like tomato sauce, as well as salsas, anything like that, where you are cooking your tomatoes, variety matters. So what you want to look for is paste tomatoes, or tomatoes that don't have a lot of water. So you will see there right beside me on the photo, this is in our high tunnel where I grow the majority of our tomatoes. I've got some yellow cherry tomatoes. They're golden cherry Golden Cherry Jubilee, I believe is the variety. And I always grow some of those for fresh eating because I just love their flavor. They are one of my favorite things. Just go in and just like eat like candy off the vine. However, I would be spending so much time trying to process those things into any type of salsa or sauce that it would just be so labor intensive. So you also don't want like, and I love the big heirloom. It's actually what's in my hand there. Like I love the large heirloom, like really juicy, slicey ones, just to eat and put a little bit of salt on, to have on sandwich and hamburgers. Like I adore those. But there's a lot more water content in them. So when I'm making tomato sauce and I'm making salsa that I'm canning and not just like fresh, I don't want to have to sit and simmer that down forever. Time is of the essence. I need to get through those. So paste varieties are going to, you're not going to have to simmer them as long. So it's going to cut down your time in processing, which is really key. So some good paste varieties. Amish paste is really a good one. I like that one. Think of your like Roma varieties. There's the Italian San Marzano Lungo. I really like that one. That variety specifically, some people feel that it has a higher tendency for blossom end rot. They do pretty well for me. The Amish paste, I really do like. It's become kind of my new darling. I used to only do San Marzano Lungo, and now I'm about 50-50. I do like the Amish paste as well. Now, another really interesting fact, though, on tomatoes when it comes to preserving is there are Italian storage varieties. I have not gotten to grow any of them yet. This will be my first year growing them, but you might see on my slide there, where it says melissaknorris.com/4. I think I'm actually covering it up. Hold on. And I will get that actual episode for you. At least my slide, it's covering it up on my end. But melissaknorris.com /454. That is a podcast episode that I just did recently with a heirloom seed grower. And he was able to get some of these tomato storage varieties from Italy, as well as I think is Spain. I don't think I'm misquoting that. What's really cool about these varieties is they were made to just almost pick like a grape. They grow in clusters, and you pick them and then you just hang them in the house, like in the kitchen or in the pantry, kind of like you would like a braid of garlic, and they will store that way and be good for months without you having to do any type of processing. Now, I haven't personally gotten to grow them yet. I do have the seeds. I'm going to be growing them this year and testing it out. I'm super excited to see how it works. But if you're curious about learning more about those specifically, you can go and check out that episode. You can listen to it. It is a podcast, but we also have a written blog post version at melissaknorris.com /454, just number 4, 5, and 4, because it's episode number 454. Because I don't have enough time to dive all the way into that. And today I want to share all the different varieties with you. So if you want to deep dive on that, it's really cool. Highly recommend it. So here's a picture of some of the paste tomatoes. So right there, you see some Amish paste. And so when you're making your tomato sauce from them or your cooked canned salsa, it naturally creates a thicker product, which I think all of us want. I don't want really thin tomato sauce, and I don't like soupy salsa either. So it just reduces the time for processing, as well as you don't have to have quite as many tomatoes to get that end product in volume, because you have more flesh on those tomatoes than you do water if you were using other variety types. Okay, pickling cucumbers. Cucumbers are one of my favorite things. We love pickle, both fermented and canned. But I also like fresh eating pickles. And I have found my two favorite varieties for prolificness as well as fresh eating and pickling is a Chicago or Boston pickling cucumber. We grow ours on trellises to help combat powdery and downy mildew, just because I live in the Pacific Northwest and we usually have a lot of rain throughout some of our summer months. And so, these pickling cucumbers, you can still eat fresh. You can let them develop and get a little bit bigger, but they are great and hold up well to fermenting and pickling as well. So I only grow pickling cucumbers, but we use them as our fresh eating too. So this is our fermented pickles. And I have found with our canned pickles, of course, will go, as long as you followed a safe recipe and done them correctly, and all those things, they'll go 2 years. But with your fermented pickles, those don't usually last as long. So I've had them go where we've had a good crop and put up quite a few gallons of them. I've had the fermented pickles last 6 months. I have found if I go beyond 6 months, they do start to get so fermented that unless you're putting them in like a chicken salad or a potato salad, something where there's other flavors, um, just to sit and eat one, it gets a little too fermented for me after about the 6 month mark. So that's kind of a bit flavor dependent. But just for, I know a lot of times people are like, well, how long will they actually store in a fermented stage? Those are kind of my personal taste preference there. So hot peppers. And the reason I'm saying hot peppers is because hot peppers you can preserve easier than you can sweet peppers. So hot peppers, of course, I love to put some hot peppers in our salsa, those types of things. But with the hot peppers, once they turn ripe, this pepper is not ripe, it's in its green state. It turns red when it's fully ripe. But you can dry them really easy. So like sweet bell peppers, I do love, but you can't really string them because of the sugar content and then just let them dry on strings as well. They're going to tend to go bad and not you're just not going to have a good performance with them. However, the hot peppers, we just string them. I just thread and get I just on a needle and get quilting thread. Quilting thread's a little bit stronger than just like regular sewing thread. And I just put them on a string and we just string them and hang those hot peppers and just let them dry. And then they just hang all year. And then I can just pull them off and add them to sauces and stews and soups or whatever it is that we want to put them on. And so hot peppers specifically, lend themselves to preserving really well and just air drying. Now, beans. Beans are one of my favorites. If we've got to talk gardening at all very long, then many of you are like, yes, we know, Melissa, you love beans. But beans are one of the easiest crops to grow. They are very prolific, and they are extremely easy to both seed save from and preserve without any equipment. So here you see we grow our beans on trellises. I do recommend pole beans simply because you are going to get more, they will produce more per plant, a pole bean variety, than a bush bean variety. Yes, you do have to have some type of trellis system for them. We use cattle panels where we just make a trellis. I have used posts. We've done teepee. Like I've done kind of all the different methods with them. But you will get more per plant. And so I'm always on maximizing space and harvest. And so I really love pole beans. That being said, what's fabulous about pole beans, but really any beans, you can do this with bush beans too, but I am a tendent toward pole beans, is you have, when the bean is young and immature, that's your fresh green eating bean. So that's what you see here. That's just in its fresh green bean eating state. However, if you let them over mature and over ripen, the bean inside the pod will develop and that will become your dried bean. And so you can do that with really any bean variety if you want to have the dried bean version of it. The other cool thing is because beans are self-pollinating in the plant family, meaning the blossom has both the pistil and stamen inside the flower, so it will pollinate itself before that flower opens. You will still see bees on them, but it's already flowered and pollinated itself. The reason that's important is because when it comes to seed saving, it means you don't have to worry about keeping strains pure or it cross-pollinating and giving you some off undesirable traits. So what that is your dried bean is also your seed bean. So with a pole bean, you can get fresh eating green beans, you can get your dried bean and your seed bean all off the same plant. And because beans are pretty prolific, especially with pole beans, you can grow a large amount. So we've got our green beans, enough that takes us through a full year. Then I have my dried bean for, of course, dried bean eating, right? Like soup beans and refried beans and all those types of things. And then I have my seed, all from the bean plant. And anyways, if you can't tell, I'm quite excited about beans, but you can grow lots of different varieties as well. And they're just dried. Like you can let them fully mature on the plant. They'll become like white, like the green part will no longer become white. That inner pod will get really big. Let them dry. And then you just have to bring them inside. so it's incredibly easy way to have preserved food and your seed. So these are some of the different varieties that we grow. So here, the white bean that you see in that photo on the right, that is what I use as a white bean, so like you would like a navy bean. And that's actually what you saw in the previous photo. That's our green bean that we eat, and it's a Tar Heel. It's an heirloom Tar Heel green pole bean. My family has been seed saving it as far back as my grandma was born in 1914, and they brought it with them when they came out here in the 40s from North Carolina. And my family has been seed saving that strain as far back, really, as I can tell. My grandmother got it from my great grandmother, which she was born in the 1800s, etc. And then the one that you see over here on the left, it produces, that is a pod that you see there where it's like that cranberry red streaking, and then that's what the inner bean looks like. So we don't eat those as a green bean. Those are just what we call a shelly bean or a dried bean. We call them October beans because that's when they're all fully matured as that inner bean pod is when you're harvesting them, like the first week of October here. So we've just always called them an October bean, and it's the same thing. My family has been seed saving them for over 100 years. It's not a scarlet runner bean because the flower doesn't look anything like that. It's a white blossom. So there's lots of varieties. However, I also do a black bean, that heirloom Cherokee Trail of Tears black bean we got from Seed Savers Org initially, and now I just seed save that myself. So there's lots of bean varieties, but I highly recommend, if you're not doing it and you're not doing some dried version and saving some as your seed, like jump into that. It's so much fun. So I wanted to make sure I left plenty of time for Q&A. So those are my top always grow every year, best varieties, and best then to turn into some type of preservation wise, right? They lend themselves really well to food preservation. So my hope is that you guys will also do some of these varieties or ones that work well in your environment, and then take that next step and preserve some of them. So that is the end of the official slide deck, but I know there looks like there was quite a few questions coming. So Paul, I hope you were able to catch some of those.
We've been
Yes.
starring them away here. All right. Thank you, Melissa. That's fantastic. I'm all excited about growing beans now.
Yay! Mission accomplished.
Yes.
Maybe we can start out. There were several people asking, what's your growing zone?
Oh, my growing zone is, well, they redid it, which didn't actually change what my temperatures were, but I think they redid it. Was it last year they redid that map? So technically I am growing zone 6B at this point in time, but that's just for perennials. That doesn't really have anything to do with my annual vegetable garden.
Yeah. All right. Question. I live in the low desert where temps get to 117 degrees. What can I do? A little different than your climate there, Melissa.
Yeah, great question. So that would be where I would be looking at growing more of your warm weather crops in the spring or the fall. So kind of looking at where that your overnight lows, right, aren't really getting too far beneath 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Just because a lot of your cool weather crops would be fine with that. Your warm weather crops like tomatoes and beans, cucumbers, etc., they won't die unless they freeze. But if your overnight average low temperatures are not a 50 degrees Fahrenheit or warmer, they kind of go into hibernation mode. They're just not super happy. They're not going to do a lot of growing for you. They just will kind of stay stunted. So you'll have to look at, obviously, at your average temperatures, both in the spring and in the fall. And so you might not be really growing anything during the summer when you're experiencing those temperatures, aside from maybe hot peppers. So instead, you would need to do a spring and or fall, maybe winter. I don't know what your winter temps are, but you would be staggering your planting of those crops instead to a different time of year.
Yeah.
Nicole is wondering if a crawl space will work as a root cellar.
Yeah, it definitely can. So one would just be making sure that if you're going to have freezing temps, is it somewhat insulated enough so that the items don't freeze? Because if they freeze, it's when they thaw again, right, that then they're going to turn to mush. And obviously then they're not going to last past that point. So yes, I do know some folks have found that crawl spaces can work really well. just keep an eye on overnight lows. If it looks like it's going to freeze, maybe stick a thermometer in there so you can see, the one that especially has like the remote viewing, like you put the thermometer and then you can put in a house like you would use in a greenhouse, etc. So you can monitor and see what is the temperature difference, how well insulated is it? So then you would kind of know what your buffer zone was there.
Yeah. Awesome tips. All right. Jan here says, do you deal with insect damage by leaving root crops in the ground?
Great question, Jan. I don't deal with a ton of insect damage. By the time that I'm leaving them in the ground and mulching, we're kind of hitting our dormant period because we do have winter here. I also do use companion planting. So for things like nematodes and wire worms, that would be more, it would be more those type of damage, right? It's not going to be like, moths or anything that's flying because they're beneath the ground and in mulch. So I do practice that. I do practice crop rotation, those types of things to try to disrupt any cycles if those things were present. And I really don't, we have outside mousers. So I have cats that are going to be going after the moles and the mice, etc. So I have not experienced a ton of damage from voles or mice either. I know that's something else that people will frequently ask. I haven't personally experienced that. We do have 2 really good active outdoor cats though that are really great mousers.
Sometimes, yeah, we had a rat problem and then we got cats, and now even though our cats are not the friendliest cats, I love our cats a lot because they keep the rats and the mice away.
Yeah, there's nothing that beats a good mouser, man. I'm like, oh, I like those genetics.
Yes. All right, another question here. Allegra, is there a way to keep fresh tomatoes fresh longer, short of canning or freezing?
Yeah, great question. Not really to keep them longer. One of the things that you can do is if you do have tomatoes that are on the vine and it's at the end of the season, especially if like a frost is coming, because if a frost hits them, like it will kill the plant. As long as there starts to be some type of color change that indicates ripening. So it doesn't have to be totally red yet, or if it's a yellow variety, right? But instead of it being that bright green, like you'll start to see a little bit of color change at the very beginning of the ripening process. You can harvest those, clip them, leave them on the vine, and then bring them inside, and they will slowly still ripen as long as you're clipping them and they have some type of color change before you've clipped them. If you clip them when they're totally green and there's not been any slight change, they don't always fully ripen, which green tomatoes are wonderful though. Like there's lots of ways to use green tomatoes too. It's just they don't really make quite the same it's not the same flavor, right? But we can do a lot of great things with green tomatoes. So keeping them where it's cool, but tomatoes really are, they are technically a fruit. And so, even putting them in the fridge isn't really going to slow it down a ton. So it would be picking them when they're almost an immature, right? Because that's just going to lengthen the time. But really, you can freeze them, you can can them, you can ferment them, you can dehydrate them, you can freeze dry them. But I don't know of anything that's necessarily just going to keep them in their natural state truly fresh longer, just like sitting on the table.
Yeah.
Cynthia is asking, how much mulch do you put over your carrots?
Oh, great question. So I typically do about 4 to 6 inches. Which is great because it acts as ground cover. So it helps with compaction, helps with erosion issues over the winter months. And I usually do a combination of if we've got leaves that we can mulch and or straw. And so that will just break down and compost down too over the winter, and also helps to protect the carrots. So I do about 4 to 6 inches. Again, it would depend on how hard you're freezing. If you live somewhere where we'll get down like in the 20s and the teens. We don't typically see very many single digit nights here. And have never gotten into the negatives. If you lived in an area where that was the case, you would need to experiment. You probably would need to do like 8 to 12 inches of mulch, Personally, what I would do, and this is what I always recommend whenever you're testing anything like this, because you wouldn't want to lose your whole crop, right? So whenever I'm testing a new method for me where I live, I would pull a good portion of it and put it in the damp sand or ferment them, or, try to keep them in the fridge in the crisper drawer, whatever method you're going to use. I would can them, I would ferment them, dehydrate them, and I would do a test plot. So that way, if it worked, you're like, hot dang, like now I know I don't have to pull all my carrots and do all this stuff with them, like they'll work. But if it wasn't enough mulch and it did end up freezing, which just means they're going to just, as soon as it thaws, they're going to rot in the ground, right? You haven't lost your whole crop. So I would test it if you're in a lot colder climate, to see how much mulch you actually truly need in order to protect them.
Good stuff.
Good. Yeah.
All right. Margaret is saying, is that also sweet potatoes for storing? I think that they're asking the question, can you leave sweet potatoes in the ground the same way that you leave your Irish potatoes in
Yeah.
the ground?
Not to my knowledge, but to be honest, I'm not hot enough here to grow sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
So I don't have any, but typically you would just cure your sweet potatoes, because sweet potatoes, once cured, they don't have the humidity requirements that other potatoes do. So you can actually cure them and store them at room temperature, and you don't have the humidity concern. So I will buy my sweet potatoes, because I'm not going to go without sweet potatoes, even though I can't grow them. And they will last in my pantry for I've had them last like 4 or 5 months, and that's just been from like Costco. That's not even been like, because nobody up here can grow them. We're too far north, so I have to
Yeah.
import them out. I can't get it like from another farmer down the road type thing. But they last a really long time, and they don't have the humidity requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, if sweet potatoes, if the leaves freeze, it'll actually start rotting. It'll like go down the stem and it'll start rotting the sweet potato down in the ground. So you have to get them out before there's a freeze, or like immediately if you see that they're frozen. So don't leave
That's
them
good
in
to
the ground.
know. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Another question here. Melissa, do you plant whole potatoes in the ground? White and sweet potatoes and baby red potatoes, do you plant direct by seed?
Great question. So I don't do sweet potatoes, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I know you use slips for sweet potatoes, but I personally have not grown sweet potatoes. But for the potato, yeah, so I'm using my potatoes as my seed potatoes. So it depends on how large the potato is and how many eyes are on that specific potato. If it's smaller, then I will plant the whole potato. If it's a really large potato and has like at least like 8 eyes on it, then I'll cut it in half, and plant half of it. But I am planting seed potatoes. I'm
Mhm.
not planting like from, like if they flower on top and would go to seed. I'm actually planting the tuber potato part.
There was another one, since we're on the potatoes, there's another person asking, how deep do you dig your trench that you plant your potatoes in?
Oh, great question. Usually take it down about 6 to 8 inches. It just kind of depends on how loamy the soil is and the bed that I've rotated to. So if it's like one of my really good beds, I can go down a little bit deeper. But yeah, typically anywhere from like 6 to 12 inches. Usually it's about
Nice.
6 to 8. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, and there were a number of questions on the onions. Nicole is asking, what's a good short day storage onion?
Yeah, Nicole, I don't
She
have that
says,
memorized, to be honest, just because I can't grow those ones. But if you go to, and this is just the site that I use. Again, there's no affiliation there or sponsorship, but Dixon Dale Onion does have where you can look by storage variety, and then they do list if it's a long day, short day, or neutral day. I don't personally, I know, I'm sorry, varieties for the short day, or not. So
yeah, I'll just say we like Dixondale also. And,
okay, good. Sorry, I didn't ask you guys either. So I'm like, oh, I hope I'm not breaking any rules here.
and they have a lot of good information on there. They not only sell onions, they have good information on growing them. And so a number of other people were asking, what's the difference between short day, intermediate, and long day, and how do you know what you are.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So it has to do with your daylight hours during summer. And so short day is going to be more the southern part of the US. And so your daylight hours don't change as much with the seasons. And then you've got, kind of the mid part of the country, and then you've got the northern part of the country. So northern part of the country is long day onions. And that's because in the summertime, we have our daylight hours are from we'll start to have daylight at 5 a.m. And it doesn't get dark until 10 a.m. Now, of course, for Alaska, that's even more so. So the significance of that is if you have a long day onion, it requires so many hours of daylight in order to grow and produce well. So if you try to grow a long day onion variety and you live in Florida, you really don't have enough of peak daylight hours for that variety to be happy and to grow and to get a good harvest on. It requires a longer amount of daylight hours. So that's where that is. Now, as far as your exact zip code and longitude, I think it's longitude that goes horizontal. Sorry, it's been a while since I've been in any type of geography class. You can look that up online. It can be a quick search, and I actually think the Dixondale Farm website may even have that.
They do have a nice map
Yeah.
that lets you know where you would be on that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, we got another. This is a really great one. Jan, do you clean the squash in any way when you pick them? Mine began rotting sooner than I think they should.
Okay, great question, Jan. I'm glad you asked this one. So typically what I do is if you're pulling them and they've got a lot of wet dirt on them, you don't want to wash them with a lot of don't use a hose, don't spray them down, because then you're just pushing more moisture into the skin, and that's going to promote faster rotting. And so this is kind of true when you're harvesting onions and garlic as well. So you want to let them dry, so then that dirt is dry, and then you can just kind of brush it off. So usually what I'll do, and because the squash is above ground, it's not like the onions and the garlic, what I'll usually do is, we'll pull that up, I'll kind of brush the dirt off, and then I will take a towel with vinegar, just moistened vinegar, and just wipe it down. And then I'm letting it cure. So after I wipe it down, I want to make sure that I'm putting it in a well-ventilated area that's got, ideally temperatures between 75 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Sometimes my squash doesn't get ripe until September, and we don't always have those warm of temperatures by then. And so I'll bring it inside and I'll set it next to our wood stove, just for anybody who might experience that. But you want to make sure that if you're wiping it down with the vinegar, that you're immediately putting it in an area that it can dry really quick, and then rotate it over so that the part that you would have sitting on something has good ventilation. So the vinegar can help, because if there is any, extra, bacteria, spores or whatever, you're getting that down. But you don't want to soak them or really spray them and saturate that skin with moisture, because we're trying to dry it out, if that makes sense.
Yeah. 100%. All right. Did you see another question here, Dad?
Yeah, Kiki's asking, how do you stop pickles from getting mushy?
Oh, yeah.
Kiki, I love it. Okay, well, one, make sure you're using a pickling variety. One of the biggest things is making sure that you are harvesting it ideally in the early morning or late in the evening when it's cool. If you try to harvest them in midday, they're just naturally going to be softer. So we want to make sure at our harvest time, ideally as soon after harvesting as possible, process them. If they're sitting for days in the fridge, even, especially at room temperature. So if you can't, you want to keep them cool is key. But the longer that they sit, the softer that cucumber is just naturally going to get. So trying to process it, which is a lot easier to do if you're harvesting them right out of your backyard. And then you want to make sure that you're removing the blossom end of the cucumber. Depending on the size of the cucumber, that's anywhere from a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch. There's an enzyme in there that can make them go softer. So you want to make sure that you're removing that. And then processing them ideally as fast as possible. So same day or the next day, that type of thing. You can use things in your cucumbers, tannins. I don't ever recommend alum. Alum is aluminum, and you do not need to have aluminum in order to have crisp pickles. So I don't want to be ingesting aluminum or putting it in any of my cooking. So you do not need aluminum or alum. to have crisp pickles. And then if you're fermenting them, you do want to make sure that you're using enough salt. If you actually or if your salt brine is not the correct ratio and you don't have enough salt in your ferment, one, your pickles can go bad because the bad bacteria could overtake it. But you do want to make sure that you actually have enough salt in the brine for fermented pickles. That will help keep it crisp. And then you can also add things that have tannins. Tannins can help keep them crisp too. So that would be adding something like a grape leaf or an oak leaf. You can use black tea if you don't have any of those available. You can just in your brine, you can put some black tea leaves in the brine and then you just strain it out. But that has tannins in it, and so that can help as well. And so there's kind of lots of different things. I actually have on melissanorris.com. I have an entire blog post that walks you through every single one of these, including like amounts. So you can go there and just type in pickles and you'll see my pickle recipes as well as how to not have soggy pickles, because we should all have crisp pickles.
As you can tell, Melissa is
Yeah.
the expert here at pickling and all things preserving, canning. Love it. Rita has the last question here. Do you have a book about all of this, Melissa?
Oh, thanks, Rita. I actually do. You set me up so well. Let's see if I'm tethered here by my headset, but I do. It's called Everything Worth Preserving. So this is canning, root cellaring, pickling, fermenting, dehydrating, all the ways that one can preserve food at home is in this book. So you can find it on my website or at homesteadliving.com or Amazon.
There you go. Wow. Everyone,
so
let's
much.
give Melissa
Yeah.
a hand in the chat. Thank you, Melissa, for coming and joining us and sharing this information. I know people have been loving it already. And do you have any last words of wisdom that you want to share with people before we wrap up?
Yeah, really is just do it. I know I sound like a Nike commercial, but really is to just go for it. And know you will have mistakes. I mean, in gardening and in preserving, you're going to be like, that recipe was a flop or that plant didn't do well, but we learn from it. I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years and I still am trying new things, and some of it works and some of it doesn't. And that's kind of part of the beauty of it. So don't feel like you failed. Don't let things stop you or hinder you. Like, just learn from them, move forward and go on. Know that you're going to have some failures and that's just part of the journey, but you aren't going to have any successes if you don't try and you don't have any failures. And I feel like I might've just been like a Hallmark commercial, but it really is true.
Love it. Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys. This was a blast.
Yeah. Well, it's been a lot of fun for us too. Appreciate you sharing and we'll look forward to next time.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Thanks,
we'll see ya.
guys. Bye.
Wow, what a great session with Melissa. Is this helpful for you? Let us know in the chat. Our mission here is to make gardening and farming easier for you, and that's why we do these sessions. And so knowing that they are helpful for you definitely is an encouragement to us. It gets us excited about being able to share these with you. And in that, many of you wonder about the replays because you may want to go back and rewatch this session. And so you can cap some of the things that maybe you missed noting down or something like that. There is a link up at the top of the page where for a limited time, we have the replays available. Or if you would like to join the hundreds of other people who have already grabbed their lifetime access to the recordings of the summit, we also have a very special little offer going on right now as well to own the summit yourself. So you can come back and revisit any of these things anytime, and you can just have the peace of mind that you don't have to try and cram everything in these 5 days. And so during the summit, we are offering $100 off lifetime access to the Seed to Harvest Summit recordings. And just today, we launched some new split payment plans because we've had multiple people email us asking us, can I just split that up? I really want to own it. So we don't want to leave anyone behind, and we have launched those out. So here's what's included with your Seed to Harvest Summit recordings. There's 2 options. You can jump in at the platinum level or at the gold package. Both of them, you get lifetime online access to the recordings of the summit, including this one here with Melissa. And then along with that, we're splitting out the MP3 versions. So if you are a podcast junkie like Melissa is, and you want to go listen to the sessions while you're gardening out in the garden, or while you're doing dishes, or while you're on the road to work. This is going to be a great way to easily be able to digest those on the go. And then along with that, we're going to split out the transcripts so that you can easily scan through and read through the sessions if you're a reader and don't really want to sit and watch an entire video. And then we're also going to share the live chat logs. This is kind of cool because in the chat, even just today, right now, people were sharing some of their favorite bean varieties, and there's all kinds. You all add so much value as a community. It's a community experience, and so we don't want you to lose that in the replays of the summit here as well. And then in the Platinum package, you will also get all of the summit packaged up and shipped to your door on a physical flash drive. So you get not only the digital, but also the physical of a physical flash drive with the recordings, the transcripts, the MP3s, and the chat logs. Now, here at Seed Time, we are on a mission, not just to give you the expert insights and training and information from our experts, like in a summit like this, but we're also here to give you the tools to put it all into practice and to make it very easy for you in your garden. And so, as a bonus, we are including 1 year of paid level access to our Seed Time Garden Planner. This is a garden planner that we have developed that makes it extremely easy to know what to do and when to do it in your garden. And so with Seed Time, you get a calendar that's based on your location. You enter your zip code or your address, and it pulls your frost dates and your growing zone. And then you can add crops to your calendar. You'll click the green Add Crop button. You'll choose the crop that you want to grow, and Seed Time will automatically give you recommended seeding, transplanting, and harvest times for that crop. You schedule it, it drops it into your calendar, showing you when to seed, to transplant, to harvest. And then here's the power of it. It's completely adjustable. So you can come and move those plantings around. You can add succession plantings in, so you can plan out a continual harvest through your season. You can put in spring plantings, fall plantings, take them through the summer. The sky is absolutely the limit. And then once you have your plan built out in your calendar, you can come over to the layout planner and lay out your garden visually. Lay out where your beds are, and then place the crops where they're going to grow at the time that they are expected to be taking up space in your garden. So watch this, because in the layout planner, you are able to track both time and space in your garden. We don't really know of any other tool that does it in this way. Watch the little green slider up here, and the crops come in and out of the garden plan down below as we slide across. So I'm going to move it over to the right, and you'll see the crops coming in and coming out. And that's all based on your garden plan of when you expect those crops to take up space in your garden. So you can walk through your entire season and see when you have space available that another crop could go in, or that cover crop could go in. And you can really maximize your garden space, which ultimately means that you can maximize your garden yield, which ultimately means that you can feed your family more and that you can have fresh food on your table a lot more during the entire season, which is the dream of everyone, right? In addition to that, you get a task list that automatically compiles from your calendar, makes it easy to stay on task through the season, so you're not trying to fly by the seat of your pants. And a journal that makes it easy to keep track of your notes and observations, pictures. You can link them to plantings, search, filter them. A lot you can do there. You'll get access to the classroom, community, and also to the Seed Time store, where you get a 20% discount on all seed packet orders in the Seed Time store. So that's what comes with Seed Time. And then at the Platinum package level, we're also throwing in 3 additional bonuses. The first one here is free bonus online access to the home gardening course. This is 1 year of online access to our flagship home gardening course with 12 modules, over 18 hours of video training, worksheets, teaching and demonstration videos, walking you through how to trellis your plants, how to start your starts so that they'll thrive, how to transplant successfully, how to deal with weeds without spending hours picking weeds on your knees. A lot of content in the home gardening course that just really takes it to another level and helps you hold your hand to grow your best garden ever this year. And then we have 2 more bonuses at the Platinum package level. One is some bonus sponsor session recordings. These are recordings that are not going to be shared during the main portion of our summit. that dive into some really neat things like the microbiometer, which is a really neat way to test the microbial life in your garden. And they walk through how it works and what it is and talk about the microbial life in your garden as well. And then also Diego from Modern Grower talks all about season extension with tunnels and covers and a comprehensive guide to how you can extend your season in your garden. And then in addition to that, you'll also get access to our bonus exclusive unaired garden trainings, which these are never before seen. They have been recorded just for the summit. We filled up all of the speaking spots, but we have a couple more speakers that were like, yeah, it would be great to have you as a part of the summit. And they agreed to do some unaired sessions here that include Michael Kilpatrick sharing about ginger and growing ginger and turmeric in the garden. If you like ginger or turmeric, you're not going to want to miss this session so that you can start growing your own ginger and turmeric. And then also James Fry has a session walking you through how he grows his Revolution garden beds that grow his plants 2 times faster than a regular raised garden bed, and all the intricacies of why that works and how the microbes work with it. Very cool stuff at the platinum package level there. So you may be wondering, how can I grab my access? How can I get the discount right now to own this summit? At the platinum level, it is $298 at full price, but like we said, you can get $100 off during the summit here for just $198. Or today, we have launched a split payment plan where you can now split it up into 4 payments of just $49.95. We don't want anyone left behind from owning this information, being able to come back to it and use it through your season. And then at the gold level, full price is $198. But once again, during the summit, you can get $100 off for just 1 payment of $98 or a split payment plan of just $25 with 4 payments of $25. All right. So if you would like to get started, our team is going to post a link up at the top of the chat, or you can go to seedtoharvestsummit.com/lifetime or use the QR code on this page. There's a link actually, I think, below this live video that you can click to grab your summit recordings as well. And we do back it up with our 30-day money back guarantee. So either the summit just adds a ton of value to your garden, and Seed Time makes it so much easier to plan your garden and execute it, or shoot us an email within the first 30 days and we've got your back 100%. Now, my friends, is the time to take your garden to the skies. It's a new year. It's a new time to start over with a new season and grow the most amazing garden that you've ever experienced before. Like Linda, who says, I've never had such great vegetables. Scott, by far our best garden ever. And my crazy garden has been amazing this year and grew in size and abundance. Joelle, so much produce. Kim, very noticeable difference in the amount of produce this year compared to last year. Or James, the kale and collards did well all winter. I ate fresh greens all winter long. CJ was using Seed Time and said, I now have a clear plan of what to do when. And Kim said, my fall and winter garden last year was the best ever because the guesswork of when to plant was simplified and so easy. If you ever struggled with the guesswork and trying to figure out what to do and when to do it in your garden, I got to tell you, the Seed Time Planner makes it so much easier to stay organized. Like Stacy here, who says it's really helped me be less anxious about growing everything and gave me a ton of confidence managing a whole garden. For Stephen, it took his planning time from about a week down to about a day. Alexis saved me weeks of work in just a few days. And Brittany, this has made days of sitting, researching, planning, sketching into just hours. So my friends, now's the time to go grab your platinum package, grab your gold package. They only will be available for a limited time at this special discount. And the replays themselves are only going to be available for a limited time until next Tuesday, the 11th. So we're going to have them up through Tuesday, the 11th, and then it's going to be coming down. But if you go grab your lifetime access to the recordings, then obviously you'll be able to reference them over and over every single time. All right.
Someone's asking about the microbiometer with the platinum package. Do you actually get the meter, or is it just the how-to? Yeah,
it would be pretty cool if you got the microbiometer with it. It is just the how-to. It's a session walking you through how to do it, and then of course you can go over and get one for yourself if you would like to. But this time we don't have it. Maybe next time we can work out something where you could get a microbiometer with it. All right, Carla, I'm a lifetime Seed Time member. Do I have access to the summit? Carla, we are our lifetime Seed Time members are members who have lifetime access to the software. And if you would like to get a discount on the summit, we do have a special discount for our lifetime members. So reach out to support@seedtime.us and we'll get you set up with that. All right. Thank you, everyone. We are absolutely stoked that you are joining us. We only have 2 more sessions left in the summit. The next session is with Kaylee Richardson, top 5 medicinal herbs for your garden. And then we're going to wrap up the day with growing grain on a small scale with David Stelzer. So come join us on the hour with Kaylee. You're not going to want to miss her session on growing medicinal herbs. She's an expert at it, and there's going to be a lot of great information there. Otherwise, I think we'll wrap it up here, take a little break, and we'll be right back.
See you in a bit.
See you soon.